This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 147, where we're talking about Jessica Jones, Season 2, Episode 9, aka Shark in the Bathtub, Monster in the Bed. What's up, fellow Defenders? It is I, Chris, one of your hosts, and we are here on episode 147, talking about Jessica Jones, Season 2, Episode 9, aka Shark in the Bathtub, Monster in the Bed. And trust me when I say this, you do not want to swap those around, because that could get painful. That really could. A shark in the bed?
Yes, fishy bed is not good.
No, it's definitely not. And a tentacle monster in the bathtub.
No.
I've seen that film. It's called Slither.
Yes.
I definitely wouldn't want either of these. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello, I am one of your other hosts, John.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for covering my ass last week. Or I should say last episode. Unfortunately, I could not be there to record. But as always, you filled it in and what an episode it was. But now I'm back, so of course I'm back and I take control of the raids, because that's what the fun thing to do is.
That's it, exactly. Yeah.
Be the controlling friend.
Well, we did say at the beginning of doing Jessica Jones that when we moved to 2 episodes a week, that unfortunately not all of us would be here for those episodes. So we did have to do episode 8 on our own without Chris. We may have one more episode like that coming up before the end of the season, but that's okay. We're enjoying covering it anyway.
Yes, just remember, all I want you to do, Derek, as the producer/seducer, I want you to record or just insert the lonely, Incredible Hulk music when just after you tell people that I'm not there. Da, da, da. They can just imagine me walking into the distance, getting deeper and further away.
No, copyright, can't do that.
Okay. Well, just fellow Defenders, imagine that. That's what you can do. Basically, imagine them walking into the sunset.
We always make sure that we talk about tropes, though, Chris, when you're not here.
Yeah, because who else could talk about it other than I? Gentlemen, I think it's about time we get into this, because I want to quickly go into some feedback we received, and then get into our usual case notes. But before that, fellow Defenders, we've had 147 episodes. We're nearly at 150. Mm-hmm. If you do not know where to find us by now, please go over to DefendersTVPodcast.com. You'll find us on our socials there. You'll find our links to the podcast, but also find the iTunes or the Apple Podcast, I should say at this point. Apple Tunes?
I think Apple Tunes is, doesn't that help clear your nose and soothe your throat?
There we go. But yes, fellow friends, if you want to go and find out where we are, what we're up to, comment along, talk to us, that is the place to go.
And there is also a page over there that has our coverage of Doctor Strange Damnation. Just click the link. You'll see all of the podcasts that are covering the 15-issue series Doctor Strange Damnation, including ourselves, Into the Night, a Moonlight podcast, Sons of the Dragon, the Immortal Iron Fist podcast, and Inner Demons, the Ghost Rider podcast, all covering a wonderful comic book series, featuring our favorite character from that series anyway, Doctor Strange.
Yes, well, my favourite character.
Okay.
Yes, I've kind of hijacked the podcast for Doctor Strange purposes.
That's all right. We've done that before.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, and then before we jump into the feedback, don't forget, fellow Defenders, we know you love Marvel. We know you love podcasts. So we partnered up with Stitcher that we can give you 1 month free, Stitcher Premium, where you can listen to Wolverine The Long Night, which has our, or we should say John's favourite Armitage, Richard Armitage?
Yes, Richard Armitage.
That's just another way of saying his name. It's like tomato, potato.
I think this is a scone versus scone thing. I think this is maybe a southern English accent would say Armitage.
Or maybe a French one.
But yes, all you need to do to avail of our lovely special discount for you guys is go over to stitcher.com/premium and enter the code Defenders. This code lasts you up until September 2018. So if you're listening to us after that point, unfortunately the offer is over. But I'm pretty sure if you skip to our most current episode, we'll have another cool giveaway prize, something to say thank you to our fellow Defenders.
You never know.
Gentlemen, I think it's time we get onto some feedback.
Yeah, definitely.
So first up, we have a long-time listener email, which again, you can get us at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. And is Lieutenant Floby, and she went on to say, "Hello, Defenders. Just finished watching episode 1 of season 2 of Jessica Jones. Great way to start the new season. I have enjoyed all the Marvel Netflix show, but Jessica Jones continues to be the most compelling. The writing is excellent and Kristen Ritter is perfect. Look forward to another great season." Lieutenant Floby, thank you so much for your feedback there. And yes, I think we've talked about it in nearly every episode that we've covered. The writing is excellent. But yeah, no, glad to have you with us. And don't forget, on the very last episode, come back to us and tell us your thoughts once you finish the season.
Yeah, really hope you've enjoyed the podcast about the episode as well. On Facebook, we got some feedback about episode 6, aka FaceTime. Robert Phillips says, "I think to me the arc seemed to be at this point to be all about refashioning your life by making your own choices. Trish, Malcolm, the Super, Jessica, and maybe even Mr. Hosiery have done this." Is it a way of compare and contrast with how being unable to make choices was dreadful, but freedoms don't always lead to joy? He says, "I also didn't see the mum or Hellcat rebound sex coming at all." What an episode.
Yes, Bob, thank you so much. And yeah, the rebound sex coming, did not expect that at all. But just as a phrase, when you are writing your feedback, don't put the mum and Hellcat rebound sex coming, because that just sounded so confusing. And I was just, did I miss part of an episode? John, did you see this part?
No, I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't. No one ever needs to see parent sex.
But the rebound sex was a bit of a surprise. I think to all of us, we weren't expecting that with Malcolm and Hellcat.
But it's a good job we got it. Our next bit of feedback comes from Jeff Childs. "They've ramped up the amount of gratuitous sex this season. It feels like filler. Doesn't really advance the story." There certainly is a lot more sex out there in this season. I think some of it is interesting just to see how the relationships move from that. I mean, I think really, with Malcolm and Trish, I think things don't necessarily end up happy ever after later on. And of course, with Oscar and Jessica, who knows where that is going to lead to.
I'm not sure if it's ramped up this season, though. If I think back to season 1, certainly remember a lot with Jessica and Luke Cage. There was a lot going on throughout the first season. So I don't know whether it's been ramped up, but it seems to have all been in one particular episode this season, maybe.
Yeah, Jeff, that's quite an interesting opinion. I don't think it's actually filler. In the last season, there was a lot more implied sex, whereas in this season, it's a lot more literally in your face. It's there. It's kind of... But it's not... I don't think its point is supposed to advance the story. It's supposed to advance the relationships between the characters.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for the feedback on episode 6.
Over on Facebook about episode 7, some feedback from Jeff Childs. "This was like the 11-centric episode of Stranger Things. It didn't advance the plot much, but gives you so much character development. It's a love it or hate it episode. Like the Stranger Things episode, I loved it, but it does spoil the pacing of the season."
Jeff's talking about the flashback episode, episode 7, I hear what you're cray-cray.
Absolutely. I think to take such a large chunk of time from the 13 episode series, it's going to be one of those things where you either love it or hate it. Mm-hmm. I certainly felt it was slow and interrupted the pacing, but I know, as I said on the podcast, I felt after discussing it through, I got more positive about it. And I think fundamentally for this, as you say, Jeff, that it's so much about character development. You really need that between Jessica and her mum because of this 17-year gap. And certainly I think with the following episode, 8 and 9, then you kind of do get to see how that kind of plays out. Mm-hmm. For sure.
And I'll totally agree with you about the Strange Things episode. I really enjoyed it. I heard weird comments that it ruined the season. I didn't see that myself, but I don't want to spoil Stranger Things on this particular podcast.
That's an upcoming podcast, apparently.
There are some great Stranger Things podcasts out there. We probably won't be doing that on our one. And thanks so much for that feedback, Jeff.
Alex Anderson over on Facebook had this to say about episode 7, aka I Want Your Cray Cray. "I'll tell you what gets my cray cray. Whenever the bad guy is able to sneak up behind the hero and neutralize him with just a needle. I just hate it. Still enjoyed this episode and the background of Jessica and Trish's relationship we got." Yeah, no, I can get it. I get it. You would think with enhanced strength comes and healing comes some form of like enhanced senses, but I suppose that's just kind of Spidey at this point.
Maybe, but he has had training for 17 years with her mother, who has the same powers. So maybe he's just learned a way to sneak up on parrot people.
It's like Elmer Fudd. Shh, I'm hunting wabbit, and he just kind of tiptoes forward. Thank you so much for your feedback, Alex.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for the feedback. So, Derek, what are some of the episode details for this episode of Jessica Jones, aka Shark in the Bathtub, Monster in the Bed?
Yep, this episode was written by Jenny Klein. Jenny Klein has written tons of Supernatural, the TV show. She also has 2 episodes of the upcoming Cloak and Dagger TV show coming from Marvel. Just premiered a couple of weeks ago, over at South by Southwest. There's been a showing of the show, apparently looking pretty good. So looking forward to checking that one out. And the episode was directed by Rosemary Rodriguez, our favorite director, I think, from Jessica Jones season 1, because she directed our favorite episode, 1000 Cuts.
Yes, that was phenomenal.
It was an excellent episode, yeah. Very Jeri-centric.
Absolutely. Love Jeri. But she wasn't being very nice at that moment.
No.
It's quite a nice piece that she came back and did this episode, just from what we'll get to, as John will give us in the synopsis now. There is some Jeri moments in it.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Rosemary also directed a number of episodes of Walking Dead. Some of the best episodes of The Walking Dead have been directed by her as well. So, lots of experience, and great to see her back for Jessica Jones season 2. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for this episode?
Sure. With the gunshots still ringing out, the shooter, Cheng, makes a run for it with Elisa hot on his heels. Thankfully, Jessica gets hold of him first. Knocked out and drugged up in the bathtub, Jessica tries to convince Alicia to find a different solution from murder, as the shooting forces Jessica to rethink her plans. Meanwhile, Ryback is released from prison and attempts to heal Hogarth. Malcolm is still in the wind after taking the IGH drug, and druggy Trish quits her radio show Live on Air, only to be offered a new job as a TV anchor just as her IGH pick-me-up runs out. Oscar asks Jessica for help with a family crisis after his ex-wife kidnaps their son, Vito. The mother and daughter partnership rescue Oscar's son, and Alicia sees the potential of a life together with Jessica. But murderous thoughts return to Alicia as her dream is threatened by Cheng. Back at the apartment, Jessica frees Cheng and calls the police as Alicia is forced to surrender herself to the NYPD.
Murderous thoughts abound throughout this episode. These discussions between Jessica and Alyssa form the funniest parts of the episode for me, I have to say. If you think about your own mother's relationship with you, I think you'd never have this conversation with your mother, hopefully, where it's, do we just talk him out of this, or do we just kill him straight away? He'll never feel that he's asleep. There are great moments in there, which kind of brings us on to our case note number 1, kidnapping versus murder.
Yeah, I mean, we see here that Cheng is the shooter. I was really surprised by that. I thought this was going to be someone who we hadn't seen before, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was not expecting Cheng, and I can kind of see some of his motives and rationale here, but part of it did feel flat that he was the shark in the bathtub. Ultimately, when you read the episode title literally. And I really kind of struggled with the debate between Alicia and Jessica as a result. I absolutely loved the debate. I just wish it had been for a bigger bad than Cheng, to be honest. I don't know if he's really been developed as well as he can be, and I'm not entirely sure that he's going about things the right way, certainly for a private investigator. So it was kind of very much like, to be or not to be questions going on. Do we run or not run? Do we murder him or not murder him? Or do we, just kidnap him and drug him up or not? But I loved the interplay between, Alicia and Jessica for absolute sure. And I actually thought that it made the episode really quite intimate. There were a lot of intimate moments with them where they were talking about the family. And again, a continuation of almost of when they were locked up in the cellar at Dr. Carl's house. So, I really enjoyed those moments between, Jessica and Alicia throughout this episode.
Yeah. So I have 2 points on just kidnapping versus murder. I did not enjoy the reveal of it being Bryce Chang. And Derek, we're going to have to discuss this now a bit back and forth, okay? Because I do not feel that he is relevant enough for him to come back in now. The last we saw him was yelling at Jessica coming out of the police station.
Yes, I think had this happened directly after we find him finding out about his closest friend, his closest ally being slaughtered by Alyssa, ripping him apart in the back of a van after he'd gone and done a job for Chang. Like, that I do think is proper justification for where he's going. For this character, you understand why he would want to take out Alyssa, because he says he doesn't want any of the police to die by trying to take him in, so he's going to use this idea of being a sniper from across the road to take her out. That all is justified. But it happened so long ago in the show that you kind of forget that motivation until he tells you it later on in the episode. And it's so far into the episode. It's like in the 50th minute when he's finally woken up in the bathtub and goes, "You're okay, Jessica, but your mother isn't safe." You go, "Oh yeah, okay, I kind of get, now I get why he's going after her." But because you don't remember it instantly at the beginning, you're wondering the whole time going, why have they tied him up in the bathtub? Why is he going after on a killing spree? Has he gone crazy? Is there something else going on here? But yeah, exactly. I get what you mean. It's not that I don't find it justifiable. I think I was just expecting maybe this was Bullseye coming into Jessica Jones, the series. This was why a shot was ringing out against Jessica, as I thought, as we mentioned last episode, John, I thought this shot was intended for Jessica, and she does get hit. You know, I didn't put two and two together immediately that, of course, he's going on a revenge against Jessica's mom, Alyssa, because of what happened.
I think this is an open question, really, because I wasn't entirely sure whether or how he had found out about Jessica's mum being the person that had ripped apart his friend. Like, he heard all the banging and the murderous rage going on in the back of the van, and I thought he thought it was Jessica, and so I assumed that he was going after Jessica as well, trying to shoot her, thinking she had done it. And then he learns that it's his mum in this episode, yet he's kind of saying, I was going after your mum. So I'm not entirely sure I know where Bryce Chang has found out that this lady who has been keeping herself secret, has been locked down in a cellar, that she's the one responsible for the death of his friend. And secondly, like, he's a PI. Like, so investigate it. Let's see him investigating it.
Yeah.
Whereas it just seems like you move from certain points where assumptions have been made in between as to how he's thought about it. And then for me, the final point is that he actually did send his friend to go and steal from Jessica, both in terms of her investigations. And so, like, A, he was doing something completely illegally. And secondly, his friend would never have been there to have been ripped to shreds by Alicia. So there's an element where maybe he is trying to deflect his own feeling of responsibility about this just purely onto Alicia, but we've not heard that yet. So at the moment, I'm kind of like going, I don't really know how to feel about this. And maybe the next episode will shed some light on Chang. But I mean, to begin with, as the Chang storyline developed, I actually just thought he was connected with Jeri. And it was to do with Jeri connecting back in with Jessica Jones. And then after that had happened with Inez and so on, that then really Chang kind of faded away a bit. And then all of a sudden, he's the big bad shooter. So it's just really confusing to me that they've used him in this way and maybe not given him a bit more airtime through the previous episodes, to be honest.
Again, I think if this shot had rang out in episode 6, just an episode after he'd been there, you'd kind of go, okay, this is fine. I get why he's on the trail. We heard that he will never give up on this from Jeri. She says to him to give up. He's lost. You hear that he won't. He comes back after Jessica's in prison and attacks, tries to shout at her effectively as to why Jeri's gotten her out. There's all of those bits, and then he just disappears. But he is always in the background, but he's not a villain like in some of the other shows like Daredevil, who's in the background and doesn't come back for 2 or 3 more episodes. It just feels a bit weird. Yeah,
it almost speaks to what Jeff Child said in the feedback, which is that because you have the flashback episode, that is a really good episode, but you are taken out of the story. So, the urgency of Cheng maybe looking to kill Jessica or finding out about his mum has been lost. Because maybe it's a rage thing and he can't control himself. It's become impulsive, and that's why he's gone after Jessica or Alicia with this gun. But because you've had those couple of episodes in between, it's lost the urgency of him ultimately, why he would do that, his rationale. Yeah, and I think that's what it comes down to. He's been underutilized, and then we haven't heard from him since. And I suppose it was almost slightly as a way to make you think he was going to be a bigger character than he was in the beginning. It was like, oh my god, this bad PI is going to try and take over Jessica. Oh, look how bad he is. And then we all focused on him and then didn't look the other direction. And Derek, you've hit the nail on the head. If this had happened directly after the death of his best friend from the military, then it would have made sense. Mm-hmm. I'm just more hoping like it was someone from IGH or from the military.
Yeah.
Because, and this kind of brings it to the very end of Case Not One, right? Jessica turns in her mum.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, John, you just to comment on what you said. No, the interactions between Alyssa and Jessica in this were fantastic. Like, it was a fantastic, beautiful mother-daughter back and forth with some psychology in between just to make things better. And yay, everything's not going to be better, but you can see some of the wounds are healing. At the end of the episode, Jessica turns in Alyssa.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we're at the end of episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
And in theory, our big bad is gone.
Maybe.
In theory, she's going to the raft.
Yeah.
So I am confuzzled as hell because I don't know where they're going. And I love that and I bloody hate it because there is not one person I can go, do you know what? Like, they need to go find that person. Uh-huh. Now, potentially, Dr. Carl is going to be very annoyed that Jessica turned in the love of his life. So, but then maybe he's been experimenting on himself. I don't know. Maybe that's the big bad. I don't know. But as of right now, like, we've got one open storyline, which is Trish and the inhaler.
Yeah.
Other than that, they've wrapped up everything. And I think this comes back, and I'm going to leave a lot of this for my defense. For something that has slight pacing issues, like, this is the perfect wrap-up. If you had added 2 more scenes at the end of this to go, oh, now she's going to the raft, yada, yada, yada. Well, and we then see Jessica in 2 months after she's now dealing with her mother being in the raft and dealing with her anger issues. That is the end of the season.
I think there's been enough mention in this particular episode during these discussions, particularly about, yes, there is the raft out there, but does Jessica want her mother to go to the raft? Probably not. And then can her mother be just put into a normal prison or a max security, a super max prison, as Jeri calls them? And will they be able to keep hold of her? Probably not. So now we've got a few episodes to experience what may happen when Alyssa is sent to some form of prison, whether that be the raft or a supermax prison. So I have a feeling if it's in a supermax prison, punched through the wall and she gets out, it's not going to be too difficult for her to get back out again. We had this type of thing with Kilgrave in season 1 where, you know, from episode 7 onwards, Jessica's using different methods to try and get rid of him off the streets rather than killing him. So we saw that a few times throughout the season, and then the final result at the end of the season was she knew there was nothing else she could do other than kill him to take him off the streets. So I don't think they've ended the show. Realistically, she's kneeling on the ground because the cops are there with guns and her daughter is telling her to. But does that mean in 10 minutes time she's not going to punch a couple of cops and run away? I don't know. We'll see next episode.
Yeah, because I was wondering whether she was going to kind of just take off from the sidewalk and jump across the buildings to escape, or fly, if you will.
Thank you.
I think, it was really interesting. You know, you have this intimate stuff going between Alicia and Jessica, and then Jessica calls the police. She's hearing Jessica call the police through the door. Cheng escapes. She goes after him. Jessica's kind of like trying everything to stop her from going after Cheng to kill him, because I really do like, I do like that comment that's made earlier in the episode where, Alicia wants to kill Cheng anyway because of, he's just going to come after her. He's going to call the police. And Jessica goes, if you lay one finger on him, you're dead to me again, which I think was really good. So you have all these moments through the course of this episode. And then you have that moment in the hallway where she punches Jessica to the floor and is about to kind of do her normal killer stonking move, with another punch to the face, and Jessica's shouting mom, up. And then that moment, where the police are surrounded and she's just pleading with her mum to effectively calm down and really just don't do anything stupid. And I loved the final pan up of that camera, and on Janet McTeer's, her whole body was just flashing with blue, red, and white from the police lights. It was just really, really good. I just thought it was a great shot where it's overhead and with the flashing. It was superb. And I think that struggle of her wanting to probably just plow into the police officers or escape, or maybe kill some of them, is just tempered by Jessica and what she's just done in that hallway where she almost killed her own daughter. And so I just thought that was a really nice element.
Yeah. Could probably talk about this particular point for all of the rest of the podcast.
Yes, but I think we do need to move on. So, gentlemen, let's talk about Jeri.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a case note number 2, but I also want to bring in case note number 3 as well. I want to combine them into a large case note, if you will. And that is Jeri starts to make future plans. And did Jeri just get healed? A cure for Hogarth. But first, let's talk about the first part of that, which is Jeri starts to make future plans.
Yeah.
I love that moment where Jeri goes black for life as she's going through all her black dresses, skirts, her clothes, and she's having that conversation with Inez. And you hear that she, when she was 8, she went to a funeral in yellow, but day to day she wears black, and she's all upbeat, as you say, Chris. She's making these future plans, and I just really, really enjoyed seeing Jeri and Inez having this conversation. And not only is she making future plans, but she comes into the defense of Inez, because you do get a whacked out Trish at the door, who's kind of becoming increasingly obsessed over this case. And you see Jeri step up to her. We're not going to dangle her over the shark tank. Why don't you do that to Jessica? And you have that really nice moment where Inez goes kind of fairly sultry with, "Hey, fancy lawyer pants," because she knows that she's just been defended by Jeri. Yeah. Jeri's leapt to her defense. She's really saying, Trish, just get out. What are you doing? Because Trish is just obsessing about this case. And I really, really like that. And there's a really nice moment just before Rybeck comes into the bedroom where she says, "Whatever happens, I hope you stick around," to Inez. And I was just like punch in the air, basically doing a Tom Cruise, on the sofa, because I was pretty happy. Derek obviously filled in for Oprah Winfrey, as he does, from time to time. And yes, it was superb. I really, really like that moment. It just felt so uplifting. Certainly when you know where Jeri's been from, how dark she is, not just with the ALS, but, we talked about 1,000 cuts there. So I really, really enjoyed this. So I'm really hoping we have a Jeri Inez, saga.
And also where where Inez has come from as well, because at the beginning of the episode where Jeri's making plans about saying, we should go to Japan together, we should see that country. And Inez is going, "I know how quickly you're going to dump me the minute that he comes in and cures you." Knowing that she's got that in the back of her head and thinking she's going to be dumped immediately once Jeri doesn't need her anymore. It's kind of cool to see that moment between the two of them where Inez realizes that Jeri does genuinely care for her.
Does she? We've seen Jeri be very manipulative.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know if she's fooling herself in this. I don't know if we'll see the old Jeri by the end of this season.
We may. I think this may be one of those life-changing events for Jeri. And Inez does call that out. Inez does say to her, "You're a user." That's why she doesn't trust her. And she says, "You're a user, and I know that because I am too." So I have a feeling that they're hitting a level playing field between the two of them. By the end of this episode, we're having that moment where Jeri is realizing Inez is actually the right person for her, and Inez is starting to trust Jeri. So
yeah,
you never know how it's going to end the season, of course, but
exactly.
I think as of right now in this episode, we're seeing them come much closer together than we have in the past.
Okay, but then let's just say by the end of the season, based on Jeri's look, Inez will either be dead or in jail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably.
It's going to be one or the other.
I hope that doesn't happen, but I think it may not end up being happy ever after for Jeri. And that could be to do with maybe, this relationship that's formed between Jeri and Inez. However slightly dysfunctional it started off as, I think that's why it has maybe grown a bit more solidity to it because of that. But I mean, one of the interesting things as well here, Inez says that this didn't always work as well.
Yeah.
So with Shane Ryback putting his hands onto Jeri to heal her, now it kind of looks like something's happening because Jeri is certainly feeling something. She's really emotional. She's crying. So it's not to say that it's not going to work, but this has not always worked in the past. So what will happen? Will she miraculously recover, or will she still be afflicted with ALS after it? And also what will happen with Ryback? Does he somehow take it and absorb it and it affects him for a while? Because it's a terminal illness and it's different from correcting maybe a broken back. So it'll be interesting.
I know he does explain when Jeri picks him up from the prison. He does explain that every time he does this, it takes days or weeks or months or years off his life, depending what it is that he's doing. But surely curing a terminal illness is probably the biggest thing he's done. So how many years is this going to take off his life? Is he just going to be, out the door and he drops dead, or is it that he only has 10 years left or 20 years left? Are we going to get a resolution to that? Will we know something about that in the future? But it is interesting that they have effectively brought Iron Fist magic and Doctor Strange magic into the most grounded of all of the Netflix series, Jessica Jones, who you have a man who's able to put his hands on someone and cure them of an illness. That's something that hasn't been seen outside of the Defenders and Iron Fist on TV, or, a little bit of Daredevil, where we had the people coming back from the dead. But we haven't really seen that in Jessica Jones before. So it's quite a departure to have someone that powerful. I know we've had experiments, we've had operations, we've had superpowers, but we haven't seen this type of power used on the show, I suppose.
Yeah, okay, I agree with you. I was going to jump in there and go, actually, it's not magic though. I think this is very much going to be a scientific thing. I think
just like Doctor Strange is a scientific thing as well. And Thor was described as magic is just science you don't understand. But yeah.
Okay, I don't. Okay, then it is not chi based. I think let's put it that way.
Right. No.
I think this is going to be more maybe magic in scientific kind of way of things.
I'd just be intrigued at the reaction of a fan of Jessica Jones who's watched season 1 of Jessica Jones and season 2 of Jessica Jones and nothing else, where they go, "What the hell just happened there? This isn't somebody punching through walls and being super strong. This is somebody putting their hands on someone and curing them of an illness." Like, that's quite a significant leap beyond the science and technology that we've seen in a lot of Jessica Jones.
Well, it's very biblical, I suppose, in that sense. But I mean, I suppose as well, it's, you're right. Jessica Jones is the most grounded, but she's obviously been in Defenders, as we all know. So she's in this world where those people do exist. So keeping her isolated from them would also be strange. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doctor Strange. But also, I even think with meeting her mum, who has the same powers, Jessica is slightly taken aback by that, in a sense. And in the same way that she was taken aback with Luke Cage and his Skin of Steel.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Shane and him, the character himself. Let's talk, rather than Shane and his healing hands. Oh god, that's the most terrible nickname or superhero name ever.
I think Ryback's much cooler, isn't it?
Yeah, Ryback's much cooler.
Yeah, but then you sound evil. Ryback.
Or wrestler?
Healing hands.
Isn't Ryback a wrestler?
Could be.
Fellow Defenders, let us know. Would you be Ryback or would you be Healing Hands? which is what is your new Defender name.
Yes.
Anyway, Jeri was good on her word. She picks him up. I like this. This is actually another one that we were kind of right with, in that healing hurts him.
Yep.
He was a boy. He's now a 40-year-old looking man. So he's had a hard life, but it's only been, 10 years? 17 years?
I don't think we know the exact number of years since Inez had her injuries. I think it's about 5 or 6 years since the escape attempt. It might be a little bit more than that, actually, because the escape attempt where Inez got her back injury was when Jessica lost her boyfriend. So that's about 10 years ago, isn't it? So maybe it's about 10, yeah.
So he was a boy then. So in theory, he should be, let's say he was between 12 and 15.
Maybe.
A boy. He was a boy, not a teenager. He was called a boy.
Mm.
And now he's coming out of jail. And this is the first time I really noticed it. It's been 10 years. It's been a hard 10 years. And that's why I think that he mentions that it's hard on him healing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it actually, as you said, John, this takes away part of his life force, takes away part of whoever he is. Yeah. It speeds him up. And I think it's to do with the octopus. I think he's another experiment.
Maybe, yeah.
You know, the way that, I need to check this, but there are certain species that, like, you chop off an arm, they regrow it. Lizards and their tail.
No, that's a Hydra, Chris.
Okay. Could he be Hydra incarnate?
I'm sure Hydra is in there somewhere with the octopus, to be honest.
But I think that could be it. Very much, it's like his body was mutated, that he's able to heal people and himself at the cost of his youth.
Do you know, I think that's absolutely brilliant theory, Chris, because I heard Inez say that, and then I saw the character come out and went, how could this guy be a boy? There's no possible way. But that's a really interesting idea, that it is draining him or making him older every time this happens. So next time, after taking back this illness that Jeri has, is he going to be an old man the next time we see him? That's really interesting.
Because he said a very great line. And when he was about to get on the bus, Jeri's there picking him up. He said something along the lines of, like, we're all walking towards the finish line, i.e. death, and, like, every time I heal, I jump or run forward. So that's what I'm thinking. And that then takes us to where Jeri, for some reason, felt the need to get naked under her silk sheets. I don't understand why. I was like, you could lie in bed fully clothed, perhaps. No, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, generally, when you're having an operation, you're naked, so it's kind of the same medical procedure.
Still wear a sheet.
But it's having that connection, isn't it? I reckon. Like, he has to touch her. He has to touch her skin. It was fine.
No, I just thought it was funny because I thought that was like, oh, he has to touch her skin. And then he went, oh no, she still has the silk sheets on top of her.
Yeah.
And then he just grabs her hand. And I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, and actually, was his hands more float? Like, he grabs her hands, absolutely.
But he's floating over her.
But he's kind of moving the hands over. Look, it's always best to get healed in bed. That's what you assume.
True. Let's say that. But anyway, I loved this scene. And I'm sorry, it was just so good. Just the silence and then the music and the tears.
Yeah.
The cinematography. The direction. Knowing in your head that, okay, I don't want to hear them talking. I don't want to hear them crying. I just want the music playing. I just want it floating over her. So it's like you're floating just above the bed.
And I do like how the scene ends with Inez asking Jeri, is she okay? And then you see her just stop crying. We don't get an answer to it this episode, but it would seem that Jeri's feeling the healing power of Ryback here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm completely with you here, Chris. I loved it when Ryback healed Jeri. And for me, it's that Jeri's theme? Because it felt like the same music when Jeri and Inez were on the sofa together as well. It's just, it's beautiful, strings and music to that. So, a little tear was shared as well from me seeing this. So I'm really good. I think lots of tears that are going to be shared from one Trish Walker, moving us onto our fourth case note. Because her inhaler's gone. She's going to go bonkers. She's going to go completely off the rails. I'm so looking forward to this. I mean, she just went round this whole episode being a monster. She was a green-eyed monster when she sees Griffin sort of doing his thing and being successful.
Yeah.
She has an outburst at Trish Talk where she quits. Which was fantastic. We have her kind of being predatory towards Inez. And then we have that realization where the puffer doesn't work anymore. Just after she's gotten her new sort of test run for CCN. And I just can't wait to see her. She plays a woman on the edge really, really well. I just loved it. And I mean, in particular, that Trish Talk one with the woman, talking about the dangers of gluten was just fantastic.
This was just perfect for me. I'm sorry, the gluten piece was just, I was like, how many people does it kill? And she goes, well, it's in the gut and it makes it really uncomfortable. And I was like, yes, preach, sister, preach. Sorry, I should just put a disclaimer in that, yeah, people in my family are celiac and stuff, so I do know it is not a nice thing, but it is just quite funny because you do have these certain authors or people on the internet who put it up there with crime, who put it up, and it's just...
Well, I don't know. I think the whole point about this from Trish is that she's facilitating people like that on her show, and she wants to be a real news anchor or news reporter. She wants to actually get to things that really matter. And that's where the fun comes in to this episode, where we have this author sitting across from her going, gluten is a really terrible thing. And that's when Trish is going to her, what, like war or cancer? Where would you rank it as the most important thing? And she's there to talk about and sell her book. So of course she's going to say it's a really bad thing, but it's not. It's not that bad in comparison to all of the other things that Trish could be using the platform she has to deal with and help. So Trish's answer to her is, no, it's like not having volume in your hair. That's what what having gluten in your body does to you. And I'm the same as yourself, Chris. I know people who are celiacs, and I know how annoyed they get at people that use the fad of taking gluten out of your diet as a dietary tool, because all of them want to eat gluten. All of them are going, I wish I could have a cake today. I wish I could have some flour like I used to be able to have, but I have to deny myself all of this because it can genuinely kill me. But everybody else is taking it as the new step to lose weight. Of course, that must be frustrating for them. And I love that it's just being cut apart here by Trish going, I am not going to talk about clothes anymore. I'm not going to talk about fashion, all that stuff. I've been facilitating all of you sitting on your hands, listening to my radio show when actually we could have all bound together and tackled some real problems like the one that Griffin's reporting about in Aleppo. I think that's a really good moment for her. I love that she stands up and says, I quit, and then goes, yes, after she walks out, realizing it's the right decision for her.
Yeah, I mean, you just see her rising frustration throughout this episode. You know, she's frustrated with Jessica for dropping this case that she has used to build her platform on Trish Talk away from these things. And then, you know, she goes after Inez, and then she sees her ex-boyfriend doing real reporting as she sees it, and then she gets frustrated again and quits her job. I just love how she sort of put that across, and I thought, yeah, really, really good. When Jessica's saying she's dropping the case, she goes, it's not like missing brunch. Like, she really wants to sort of do this. And that was a really nice moment between the two of them anyway, because Jessica notices that she's high and that she's going into relapse, but she's got her mum to deal with. At the same time, Jessica is kind of launching back at her. What if I want to be done? When do I get to be normal? To Trish, that Trish is saying it's my lifestyle. I'm a celebrity. This is why, these things happen. And Jessica's like, well, I want to be normal as well. It's for a different reason. I think, there's the retorts back from Trish as well when Jessica notices that she's kind of bit in relapse, and she's going, well, have you had a drink today?
Yeah. Jessica's response is, I'm always drunk. That's not the problem.
Exactly.
Here. The problem is that you're high and you're supposed to be off it all. Yeah. You need to call your sponsor. It is a hugely important moment here for these characters, because since they reconnected many years ago, Jess has been the one that's been taking care of Trish when these things happen to her. And we have the voiceover from Jessica going, I can't handle this. I can't handle her and do this. And it's the worst thing. I have to let my friend go because I need to deal with this other issue with my mother. If my mother wasn't around, I'd be able to take care of her, kind of thing. So it is really important in the episode.
Yeah, we've seen this coming for a while. We knew the inhaler was not bottomless. We knew that Trish was becoming an addict again. We've seen this decline, and I'm really interested to see where it goes, because the doctor who's been making this for Will Simpson is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Will Simpson is dead. We know that Dr. Carl has said that Kozlov took all that research to the army, and that's all we know. So I talked about how I thought this was almost this could have been the end of the season in terms of the storyline. This is the next storyline.
Exactly. Yeah.
Trish is about to die because she needs a hit. She basically goes through withdrawals to the point where basically it's almost going to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where the storyline is going. But the crappiest part about this is I really wanted Trish to get on TV. I wanted ZCN. I thought that was going to be cool. But she has an interview with them tomorrow.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
We've seen her just go down to nothing within a couple of hours without a hit. So, this is 24 hours.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I bet she regrets giving that hit to Malcolm last episode now.
Yeah, and speaking of Malcolm, where is he? Because he's in the wind here after he ran down the alleyway. There's some kind of excuse that's made to Trish by Jessica, saying that he's gone to visit his parents, but that I think is a pure sort of lie from Jessica's point of view to cover up the fact that her mum is there, and you have Cheng in the bathtub. So Malcolm's still there. I really want to see what Malcolm is doing. Is he kind of curled up in a ball somewhere in a forest out in upstate New York, or where is he?
I thought when Alyssa and Jessica were having the fight in the hallway, they were going to bust through his door and they're going to find Malcolm on the floor inside his room, just because they were going back and forth and hitting off Malcolm's door. I thought there was going to be just that moment, but it's interesting. I like the fact they mentioned that he's gone to see his parents, because remember my theory from a couple of episodes ago, there's something interesting between Malcolm and his parents, but probably not. It's probably just one of those things that adds layers to his character, that he obviously has parents and he does occasionally see them. That's all.
I love the way he actually has parents
that are alive.
It's he's not just immaculate conception.
In this universe, how many of our characters don't have parents, or who have parents have already died? Pretty much all of the main heroes have lost their parents over time. So having two parents at home that you can go and visit for Sunday lunch is really unusual in this world, and Malcolm does.
It's revolutionary.
That's a superpower.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's revolutionary storytelling.
It is.
From one running man to two running women and a Greyhound bus. Should we talk about Oscar and the case of his missing son as our final case note for this episode?
Yeah, this was interesting to see Sonia back again, blaming the superhero in the building for the influence it could have on Vito. So she's already had that moment before where she's reacted really badly to having Jessica Jones in the building. As we know, Oscar had that reaction to her to begin with, but then when she arrives at the apartment to bring back Vito, nothing worse that could happen than walking into the apartment, seeing broken glass everywhere, seeing gunshots everywhere. So I kind of understand Sonia's reaction here to get her child as far away from this as possible. I kind of get it. I'm a Jessica Jones fan, but in the real world, if I walked up to a door in someone's house that has already caused a bunch of trouble, of course I'm going to try and get my 6-year-old son or 10-year-old son away from that situation. I kind of get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think here it's that moment of bonding as well with Alicia and Jessica here in terms of pursuing Oscar's ex-wife with the kid. I have to say, I thought Janet McTeer's face was priceless. I absolutely broke up when she breaks the glass in the picture frame. It is just whoops.
It's a really lovely child look, isn't it?
Absolutely loved it. Indeed, you get a reference to Sterling in this moment as well. Jessica's ex-boyfriend, which I think is kind of interesting, because I don't think enough of that tragic event has been played out between the two of them. But it's a really interesting thing, because it is, Jessica does not know what to do with her mum. And in this moment, there's a number of things where she says to Sonia, he, as in Vito, is better off without a mother in prison. And she's probably thinking, I'm the same. I don't want that. But having said that, at the same time, she's wanting to kill Cheng, and she goes, that's what you would do if I wasn't here. Is that the thing that turns Jessica to call the police? Because ultimately she realizes that Alicia is completely unchecked and it's only her presence that is maybe grounding it, or previously with Dr. Carl Malice. So that was a really nice crossover here with these, two different relationships, you know, a mother and son, a mother and daughter, and obviously, the kidnap of one Vido from Oscar.
Yeah, I agree. And I was wondering whether it was supposed to be something that should have been teaching Alyssa the lesson here, not Jessica. Jessica knows the lesson here. She knows that she would be happier with her mother out of prison. Alyssa doesn't learn anything here. She's still willing to just snap the neck of Chang and then move on and run away. You know, that seems to have been what she's been doing for the last 17 years, or at least the last 2 or 3 weeks anyway, in this world, that she kills anybody that gets close to her on IGH. So that's quite interesting. I was kind of expecting that Alyssa might learn something by the end of the episode, but I understand why Jessica would now turn her into the police when she realizes over and over again, this woman just keeps saying, why don't I just kill him? You don't have to worry about it. You can walk away. You don't have to see it. I'll kill him. It's like, no, you can't kill him, Mom. But don't worry about it. I'll do it. It's fine. You don't have to get involved. It's really harsh that Jessica has to have this conversation with her own mother, you know?
Just imagine it at a parent-teacher's day in the day. Say, no, you're failing, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry, I'll kill her. It's okay. You just walk away. You get a new teacher. I'll just kill her. It's fine. I like the fun reference that Captain America was gone. So then he knew Vito was gone. It was a fun piece. A nice callback to the earlier episode.
Yeah.
It was very much a mini detective story within a larger, more serious conversation story, which we had the Alyssa and the Jessica constant back and forth about the family and who's the what, which we've already covered in this episode.
Yeah.
But seeing them at the end, like that bus scene was just fantastic.
I really liked it.
I know it was so. It's a trope and a half. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. It's just like, oh no, a bus is getting away. Hold on, let me run down and pick it up with one hand. But then we get a nice spin on it that, like, you see Jessica, she kind of runs one hand. No, that's not working. Two hands. Nope, that's still not. I'm getting dragged by the bus now.
Yeah.
And then you see Alyssa come down, and like Alyssa's the one. She helps. Let's say that she helps, because I want to say Jessica's the best, but we know Alyssa's stronger. They do lift it off the ground, don't they?
No, they pull it to a full stop, but I think the big difference that you see is on Alyssa's side, all the metal that she's been holding is crunched together because she is so much more powerful than Jessica, whereas Jessica on her side is just holding it back with her strength. Alyssa is squeezing and crushing it like she probably wanted to do to Chang all episode.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a nice Easter egg, but we'll talk about that at the end of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
They handled this in a good way.
I think so.
Like,
I think so.
The reason that you see that Oscar's wife, she comes to Jessica at the end and says, I'm worried, blah, 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 and she gives her rationale.
Yeah.
Like, you can see, oh, okay, well, that's fine. You've also really bad at credit card debt, and your job's gone, and you have to steal money in order to run away.
Mm-hmm.
And you couldn't even run away to Peru like you wanted to. You're going to Niagara Falls.
Yeah, yeah.
What are you going to do there? Cross the border to Canada?
Mm-hmm.
They handled this nice, but I think that the best part is what we see at the end, which is Jessica and her mum, which brings it to the very end of the episode, because Jessica knows, as you said, her mum's just a ball of anger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's crushing buses, and then when she's there in front of Chang, her hands are twitching, and that's when Jessica knows.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the end of our episode for this time. Again, we've got another bit of a cliffhanger here for me. This does feel like what's going to happen next. Is she definitely going to prison? Is she going to run away? What's going to happen when she gets to prison? Will she stay behind the walls? Hasn't really stopped her too much before the past. So let's see what happens. I'm presuming we're going to get a fair bit more story. We've got another 4 episodes to go, but really interesting. Chris, I think we're going to give you the big note. Since you haven't been here for an episode, we're going to give you the big note on the episode.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yes, there is a beautiful Easter egg in this one. We get it every season. It's our lovable cameo from Stan Lee. He is on the back of the bus where he's doing a ad. He's a client with a quote for Forbrush and Associates, which is another legal firm. Kind of, we can assume it's one of these kind of ambulance chaser type ones.
Maybe.
But there's even more. The fact that they're calling it Forbush is it's a nice nod to when Marvel was still doing some parody comics before Howard the Duck. Well, before Howard the Duck.
Oh, yeah.
They had Forbush Man, who was a guy who had no powers, who essentially just ran around in a red onesie with a bucket on his head and a towel wrapped around as a cape and leather boots.
Yes, I remember him well. He used to be in Not Brand Eck when I was a kid.
Yes. But there you go. That's the big one. One I liked from the last episode, which I call out, is Trish raking the dude's face.
Yes.
Just like Claus. I know you guys called it out, but I still love that.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, really good. I like the fact that both Jessica and Alicia both talk about their night terrors, that they both suffer from them. You know, we've had that parallel with the drinking to take the edge off, and now that they both suffer from night terrors, obviously Alicia's a little more serious, and the idea that, you know, their terrors are about losing their daughter or their mother over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I thought that was really nice. And in particular, as Jessica is locking Alicia to the bed, she says how Carl used to chain her to the bed normally as well. And Jessica replies with, "How romantic." Yes, we will leave it there. On notes, any more notes?
Only one note that I was thinking about, which was, it's just a little bit of a shame that ZCN, the network that Griffin works for, isn't the network that we've seen so often in the Marvel Universe, WHIH, which has been in all the movies, or many of the movies, been in many of the TV shows. It would have been great to bring that in and have them as the TV network that Griffin works for and then Trish goes to work for. So that way it would really explain if we did get a cameo from Trish Walker in a future Marvel movie, that she could just be on WHIH as a new reporter for them. I thought that would have been a nice little way to tie them all in.
No, that would be good. I was thinking it was CCN, actually. I didn't realize it was ZCN, but yeah, okay. Grand. I've been mispronouncing it all the way through this podcast. However, the other thing is that Alicia chucks the ashes down the toilet and flushes them away. And we have that really interesting conversation. It's a little kind of close to being, a pretty delicate conversation about who was responsible for the car crash as well, which I thought was quite nice, where Alicia is blaming Brian, her husband, because he couldn't drive and he wouldn't let her drive, whereas Jessica's always held on to the fact that she thought it was her fault, the reason why the car crashed.
Yeah.
And the result of that is ashes down the loo.
Mm-hmm. And it's quite interesting. Doesn't Alicia say that Carl is the one that sent the ashes to Jessica to get over the death of their family? So technically those ashes may not be at all her family's ashes. That's what I got from it. That's why Alicia's kind of going, I'm going to throw it down the toilet because I don't even know who these are kind of thing. But Jessica has thought for the last 17 years that she was in possession of the ashes of her family. But yeah, weird.
I know it would be terrible, and I'm calling it out. If they do it, I'm going to scream. But I'm kind of hoping that at the very end, we'll find like her brother's actually still alive, and Dr. Carl's did some other test on him, and he's XYZ, but her dad is actually dead, and they were his ashes. Something along that I think would be quite fun.
It would be quite fun. Yeah, I kind of see that happening, like in Scream, where next season maybe her brother is the main villain, and then the season after that, her father comes back to take on this. That could be kind of fun. And
Derek, yes, before I bring into my final note, I do want to say, yes, that would have been an interesting Easter egg if they had brought her over, because I would love to see Trish in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Especially now that we may lose a lot of MCU characters in Infinity War.
Yes.
She's in the MCU. She's just not in the movies, remember, guys?
Captain America is lost in the Marvel Netflix world. Vito's Captain America is lost. Will he be lost in the MCU? Dun, dun, dun.
The final note and a way to just end this beautiful episode, gentlemen, is can we just have a 10 seconds of silence for Jessica's bed? Because let's be fair, that bed has seen some punishment in the last 2 seasons.
It's been broken.
It's been broken twice by superpowered people. I was just like, no, that bed should just people lie in it and sleep in it. It's a nice bed. It's a nice bed. But no, it just constantly gets destroyed. But The door is still alive.
That's very true. We still have not had a smashed door. There's one note that I haven't called out for 9 episodes because it is the most obvious note and none of us have mentioned it. I'm surprised. Does anybody think it's kind of funny that the only major non-person of power is called Super in almost every episode? Oscar has the title of Super and nobody else has ever had that title in any of these shows, and he's basically the guy that fixes your toilet, but he's called Super in this show. I just think that's quite funny that they keep doing it. And I haven't mentioned it in any of my notes so far, but I just thought that was funny. Anyway.
Okay, well, gentlemen, I think it's about time we move on to our defense. Derek, do you defend Jessica Jones Season 2, Episode 9, aka Shark in the Bathtub, Monster in the Bed?
You know, I do defend this episode, and it's really because of Janet McTeer and Kristen Ritter's performance throughout this. There's so many great moments with those two characters reacting off each other that I kind of feel that the writers and the director allowed it to just play out probably a bit more than I was expecting. They allowed the two of them to bounce off each other over and over throughout this episode. And it's great to watch. It's really enjoyable to watch. If we go another 2 years between season 2 and season 3, these are the things that I'm going to enjoy when I rewatch Jessica Jones, the characters interacting with each other. It's not going to be about the overall story, because once that's done, it's done. There's no point in rewatching the show. But having these kind of characters batter off each other constantly, where Jessica's trying to calm her mother down like she's a naughty 6-year-old child, and her mother's trying to get at Jessica and say, why don't you respect me? I'm your mother. That's great. It's a great little dynamic between the two of them. And we've only got 4 more episodes to go. So this episode, originally when I saw it, I felt it was a little bit slow, didn't have a huge amount of movement in the episodes, but I think it underlying it all is the performances of these actresses and what it is filling out about their characters. So I do defend the episode overall. Chris, do you defend this episode of Jessica Jones?
I do, but it's borderline. And I should probably say that my defense for episode 8 was borderline too.
Right.
And it's nothing to do with the actors. It's very much a pacing issue for me now. This felt like an episode 12 to me, because they just wrapped this major storyline for me. And I felt, okay, the next one we'll just kind of get the wrap up and then that's it. I couldn't see where they're going. They're leaving one thread open. And now, discussing it with you, I'm like, okay, this makes more sense. Yeah, but it just, for 2 episodes of pacing, as you said in your defense, not a lot happened. In theory, there was not massive story beats. You could have combined the last 2 episodes into one, and it would have been, the pacing would have been a lot brisker. You wouldn't have lost any scenes. I just think that that's where this is becoming an issue for me, and I'm hoping now that they've kind of got these character parts done, they're setting up the characters into the right places, that the next 4 episodes, or at least the next 3, and then the conclusion will be a lot more brisk in their pacing. That being said, Derek, I'm the same as you. The performances and the character development and the overall the interactions between the Jeri and Inez, Jessica and her mom, Oscar and Jessica, like that is why I do love this show, because you do get this. They are super. They're dealing with big issues, but you know what? They still have their own problems, and I think that's why I'm kind of now borderline. I'm like, yes, I defend it. It's just gone over the 50-50 mark. Mm-hmm. The only piece that I'm still a bit iffy on is the Trish addict storyline. Not because I think of where it's going to go, which I'm hoping I already talked about, but because they've done this and they're doing it too slow, like really too slow. I just want it to kind of kick off now. And it's just because I don't like seeing the degradation of the character of Trish. And I don't know, I think that's probably just me kind of enjoying her as a character. But when you see her falling into this pit of addiction, I'm like, no, I don't want to see this anymore. Just speed it up here now, people. Come on. And I think that's more just on the writing and how good it is, and the actor, how great she is. But anyway, so I do defend, but it is borderline.
Cool.
So, John, on that slight bombshell that I am in love with Trish and I don't want to see her hurt. Do you defend this episode of Jessica Jones Season 2, Episode 9, aka Shark in the Bathtub, Monster in the Bed?
Yes, I do defend this episode of Jessica Jones, but a bit like you, I'm on the knife edge here on defending it. I would give it 3 gluten-free monsters out of 5. And I think it's, as you say, I think the pacing here, I absolutely love the exploration of the relationships between Jessica and Alicia, and also with Hogarth and Inez. I've really, really enjoyed them. Unlike you, I'm really enjoying the degradation of Trish Walker. I think this is really intriguing to see her, because you have this notion about her addiction in the past, and I really liked how that linked in with Jessica here, where she notices that for the first time. But Trish is so frustrated about everything to do with her life. Is it true to her, or is it the drug that's helping to fuel or intensify that frustration? So it's really interesting to see. So I loved all these elements, but I do think, as you say, I think the pacing is off. And for me, I'm not entirely sure I understand Cheng as the shooter, to be honest. It's not what I was expecting to lead into after that shot through the window at the end of episode 8. So in some ways it played with my expectations, and that may in part be why it's a little lower. But it's also because I think, you know, these relationships can still be built, but I would have loved to have seen someone who had a reason to shoot here. I don't think Cheng does. I don't think he would risk his professional career, given what we saw in the first few episodes, to murder someone or to give collateral damage. And plus, I don't know where and how he got to know that it was Alicia. So for me, this is just the fact that maybe if Cheng had been written in more, we got more idea about his motivation. Maybe he was connected to IGH. You know, we know he's been in the army. Is it something to do with that? Who knows? But I really want this now to push on in episode 10 and really just see what happens here. What's going to happen? Because I love exploring these relationships, but I just want to know a bit more about this story now that is unfolding. And yeah, will it be Trish and her disintegration in some way and her rescue by Malcolm or something? I hope it's more Jessica central. Absolutely. But, you know, still a really good episode. Lots to love in this, I think. Mm-hmm. Just maybe suffers from motivation of that sort of shooter in Cheng, and the pacing. Again, you were expecting it to race along here, and it didn't quite so much. But yeah, a defend from me.
Well, that's a great defense, and I love your idea about Chen actually being army and being going after it. We didn't think about that. We haven't discussed it, but let's bring that to the next episode. We'll be back next week with our review of Jessica Jones Season 2, Episode 10, a.k.a. Pork Chop. Pork Chop.
Pork Chop.
Really intrigued why it's called Pork Chop. Every single episode of the show, I haven't really mentioned them. I used to do it with Iron Fist and with Daredevil and with Punisher and all those shows. I used to actually talk about what the episode was named from, but these have all been taken as lines from the episode. So where's Pork Chop coming from? I'm intrigued. But looking forward to talking about the next episode when we get back to Defenders TV Podcast. Thanks for joining us.
As always, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Yeah, I'm going to go and dangle Chris over a shark tank, and then I'm going to go and catch a bus. And then I'll be back with you next time to speak with you. Okay?
Yes, thank you so much. Goodbye for now.
Bye.